So you guys got to remember, from the time of the Egyptians, there was no European influence. There was no takeover yet. So they were able to get this knowledge and flourish and build, one of the greatest civilizations. So as I said, we can go back and look at the pyramids and marvel at those and say who built them. But we cannot forget the fact that the dynasties that we know of, the bodies that we can find, the people who we know exist, built equally amazing things, amazing structures, amazing colossal statues, and so on and so forth, that we can also look at and say, wow, how did they do this? So again, we know that they understood that knowledge, and it was getting that knowledge back, and they almost had it. But you guys got to understand, during all this time, there was this veneration of the zodiac. There was this understanding of the zodiac and the planets and the stars and so on and so forth. And they used it throughout their civilization, and it was a staple of the ancient civilization that they keep from us. Every single civilization that we go back to ancient, we find a zodiac. That is not a coincidence. We find a zodiac. We find the same exact teachings. I talked about this to you guys before. We can look across the world. We're going to see the same teachings, the same ancient teachings from one civilization to another across the planet. So now let's go back, as I always do. Ancient Greek civilization, ancient Egyptian civilization. And understand that, the ancient Egyptians was in tune, of course. The ancient Egyptians understood, nature and what was going on. The problem was you had the ancient Greeks, you had the Europeans who could not understand the spirituality of the ancient Egyptians. So they were always trying to understand and rationalize spirituality, put it into, terms that's normal to them. They were trying to rationalize, spirituality and make it, make sense and make it fit into, their world instead of being spiritual. They were trying to be, they was trying to be materialistic instead of spiritual. If you understand, it's gonna make sense in a second. So you got to think about it. You have pack of wolves, pack of lions. I always use them as an analogy because it's the most unbelievable thing when you really pay attention. They can go and hunt and coordinate attacks without no verbal communication. This is amazing when you see it. They actually coordinate and they strategize attacks on large animals. And they are successful a lot of the times because they strategize correctly. When they go and hunt buffalo, there's a plan of attack. For the wolves, there is a unity. There is a sense of intelligence to the way these animals hunt. So they were trying to rationalize this instead of just looking at it and saying, it is what it is. It is the nature of it. So when you understand that the reason why we cannot catch up to where the Egyptians were is because we have been taught by the very people who were trying to rationalize spirituality and put it into terms that they can understand. We have learned from them. We are trying to learn spirituality from a non-spiritual position. Plain and simple. This is why meditation is a big part, because then you get spiritual and this is how you begin to learn. Instead of you being this whole materialistic mind frame, this materialistic person that's trying to rationalize things and put it into terms instead of just letting it be. So it makes perfect sense that the ancient Egyptians wrote in hieroglyphs, that their pictographs were so their people can understand. You would have to be spiritual and in the know. You wouldn't be sitting there trying to figure it out. It would just be. You understand? It would just be a feeling. You would just feel it. The way we feel negativity, the way we feel love and joy and happiness, you would just feel it. You will look at something and know it instead of you trying to ABC 1, 2, 3. And this is what the Greeks were doing. And this is why it was so hard for them to pick this up, because they can never grasp the true spirituality of what the ancients was doing. So, and them trying to rationalize everything, they came up with 4 concepts. They got the last 2 after the first 2. So the first 2 concepts that they came across was transcendence and immanence, which would give them pantheism and panentheism. So let's look at immanence. It says, the doctrine or theory of immanence holds that the divine encompasses or is manifested in the material world. So understand, these are Greeks trying to rationalize spirituality, or God, so to speak. It is held by some philosophical and metaphysical theories of divine presence. Immanence is usually applied in monotheistic, pantheistic, pandeistic, or panentheistic faiths to suggest that the spiritual world permeates the mundane. It is often contrasted with theories of transcendence, in which the divine is seen to be outside the material world. And understand, look what it's saying here. Major faiths commonly devote significant philosophical efforts to explaining the relationship between immanence and transcendence, but do so in different ways, such as, and you can see here casting immanence as a characteristic of transcendence, God, common in Abrahamic religion. So understand what it's telling you here, that before they came up with these religions, this is what they understood. Now let's go to transcendence. In religion, transcendence refers to the aspect of God's nature and power which is wholly independent of the material universe, beyond all physical laws. This is contrasted with immanence, where a God is said to be fully present in the physical world and thus accessible to creatures in various ways. In religious experience, transcendence is a state of being that has overcome the limitations of physical existence and by some definition has also become independent of it. This is typically manifested in prayer, seances, meditation, psychedelics, and paranormal visions. It is affirmed in various religious traditions concept of the divine, which contrasts with the notion of a God or the absolute that exists exclusively in the physical order, immanentism, or indistinguishable from it, pantheism. Transcendence can be attributed to the divine not only in its being, but also in its knowledge. Thus, God may transcend both the universe and knowledge is beyond the grasp of the human mind. Although transcendence is defined as the opposite of immanence, the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Some theologians and metaphysicians of various religious traditions affirm that a God is both within and beyond the universe, panentheism, in it but not of it, simultaneously pervading it and surpassing it. Pantheism. The term pantheism is a modern one, possibly first appearing in the writing of the Irish freethinker John Toland, and constructed from the Greek roots pan, all, and theos, God. But if not the name, the ideas themselves are very ancient, and any survey of the history of philosophy will uncover numerous pantheists or pantheistically inclined thinkers. Although it should also be noted that in many cases, all that history has preserved for us are secondhand reportings of attributed doctrines, any reconstruction of which is too conjectural to provide much by way of philosophical illumination. At its most general, pantheism may be understood positively as the view that God is identical with the cosmos, the view that there exists nothing which is outside of God, or else negatively as the rejection of any view that concerns God as distinct from the universe. However, given the complex and contested nature of the concept involved, there is insufficient consensus among philosophers to permit the construction of any more detailed definition not open to serious objection from some quarter or other. Moreover, the label is a controversial one, where strong desires either to appropriate or to reject it often serve only to obscure the actual issues, and it would be a sad irony if pantheism revealed itself to be most like a traditional religion in its sectarian disputes over just what counts as true pantheism. Therefore, pantheism should not be thought of as a single codifiable position. Rather, it should be understood as a diverse family of distinct doctrines, many of whom would be surprised and indeed disconcerted to find themselves regarded as members of a single household. Further, since the concept has porous and disputed boundaries, there is no clear consensus on just who qualifies, no distinctive roll call of past pantheists, given this situation. That range of things that may be usefully said about all pantheists is perhaps limited, but nonetheless, a variety of concepts may be clarified, the nature of contentious issues explored, and the range of possible options more precisely mapped out. Okay, panentheism, meaning all in God, from the Greek pan, all. theos, God, is the belief that the divine pervades and interpenetrates every part of the universe and also extends beyond space and time. The term was coined by German philosopher Karl Kraus in 1828 to distinguish the ideas of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel and Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling about the relation of God and the universe from the supposed pantheism of Baruch Spinoza. Unlike pantheism, which holds that the divine and the universe are identical, panentheism maintains an ontological distinction between the divine and the non divine and the significance of both. In panentheism, the universal spirit present everywhere, which at the same time transcends all things created, while pantheism asserts that all is God. Panentheism claims that God is greater than the universe. Some versions of panentheism suggest that the universe is nothing more than the manifestation of God. In addition, some forms indicate that the universe is contained within God, like in the Kabbalah concept of Simsim. Simsim, it has a T, but you pronounce it like tsunami. Simsim. Also, much Hindu thought is highly characterized by panentheism and pantheism. The basic tradition, however, on which Krauss's concept was built, seems to have been Neoplatonic philosophy and its successors in Western philosophy and Orthodox theology. Now, if you can grasp all this, what it's trying to tell you is basically how they took spirituality itself and tried to understand it and try to break it down in ways to where it can be understood in a scholarly way rather than a spirituality way, spiritual. So I talked about this before. When you have to understand that you're talking about a civilization of people that live spiritual lives. You can go into many civilizations and you see Africans still living primitively, and their language are more tones. It's tonal. It's like musical almost, so you can understand, spiritual, which we're going to really make that connection between music and spirituality in this video like you've never seen before. So they were trying to grasp this concept of not feeling but thinking, not being but doing, and it's just you walk the way you're supposed to walk. You don't try to figure out how you should walk, you just walk. And they were trying to figure out what they shouldn't been trying to figure out but feel. So this is what all this is. All this panentheism and pantheism and transcendence and immanence and all this stuff is about them trying to basically take spirituality and rationalize it and put it into words so everybody can study it and understand it and grasp the concept of a creator, which had they just, paid attention to the Egyptians and what the Egyptians was teaching and understanding about, energy and consciousness and so on and so forth, they would have grasped it, grasped the whole concept, but they could not. So because of this, and because when we go to study all of this, you must understand, one, what do we see when we're looking up these words? It goes back to what? Greek. Always going back to Greek or Latin, the people who gave us this stuff. And the reason why it's hard for us to start to grasp these concepts because we are stuck in scholarly ways and we are proud of it. Everything is about you're a scholar this, you're a scholar that. We have lost the ability to feel and understand and thus becoming exactly what the Europeans are. As Africans, as Black people, it is in us to feel. We must feel, we must understand and understand that this energy is there and it exists. It's not something we have to study, that you have to read. It's there. We have to know it's there. We have to feel it out. And when I talk about meditation and talk about understanding spirituality, this is what I mean. Everybody want to run the books. Everybody want to run the words. Everybody want to run to what was said instead of studying the art of the energy itself and the consciousness itself, which is inside of each and every one of us. And it's only there you're going to find the answer. And it's tough because some people are not going to grasp this because they're stuck. They're stuck in their scholarly ways. They're stuck in a way to where most people are trying to take this. And it's almost as if this is like, something they wanted to do. They wanted to make this so it can be felt, and you can't put it on paper to teach it. A person must feel it. And it was like they kind of locked it off there. And they knew it will only be one people, one set of people who will ever be able to unlock it. And that is the true spiritual people of this planet that can ever grasp the concepts and what's there and actually take it in spiritually and feel it rather than look at it on paper and try to understand it. And that is us. As I said, they left everything for us. It's all still there. The writings are there. Everything is still here for us to grasp. Yet they have taken over the concept of spirituality and have given us scholarly. I also want you to notice how these terms are all dualistic. Transcendence and immanence, pantheism, and you start to read the definitions as I've read, and you see that they are, dualistic. It's a yin and yang to all of it. It's in and out. All of it there to balance and unbalance, to keep the role of duality, which is in all of us. We are all dualistic beings. And it's like it has to be this way. But in there, don't get me wrong, in there, trying to understand on a scholarly way, they were right in many ways the way they put it, and we have to, in some shape or form, be thankful for the scholarly part of it because, it kind of sort of gave us the knowledge to understand what's being said. But, we just took on the knowledge because most people are just trying to prove to other people. They ain't really trying to grasp the spirituality for themselves. They're just trying to be able to teach it and say, I know this and you don't.